And I want you to see what happens next. Some of you already know, you're familiar with this story, but David's view of God shifts within a matter of minutes, seconds. And you see this in verse number 6. Look at it with me. It says this: "But when they arrived at the threshing floor of Nacon, the oxen stumbled, and Uzzah reached out his hand and steadied the ark of God. Then the Lord's anger was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him dead because of this. So Uzzah died right there beside the ark of God." And notice David, verse 8. David was what? He was angry because the Lord's anger had burst out against Uzzah. He named that place Perez Uzzah, which means to burst out against Uzzah, and it's still called today. David was now afraid of the Lord, and he asked, "How can I ever bring the ark of the Lord back into my care?" So David decided not to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom of Gath. Now, this is important. Think about how this goes. So David's worshiping God his own way. And just to clarify it, he placed the ark on a cart that was pulled by oxen. We're going to come back to that in a minute. But Uzzah, who's walking behind, reaches out to steady the ark because he doesn't want it to fall to the ground. And the moment he touches it, he drops over dead. And I want you to see the second way David saw God. Here it is, going to come on the screen. God is at fault. Oh, we're just talking to our human condition today, right? Because at this moment, here's what happens. David sees that God isn't fair. He thinks God's being unreasonable. And you know what? We can kind of relate to that, I think. Because I don't know about you, but Uzzah, I really believe, was trying to do the right thing. I think in a lot of ways, Uzzah was saying, God, I do want to respect you. I don't want your presence to just fall to the ground. And so he touches it, and he dies. And we can think to ourselves, God, that's mean, and you're not fair. Why in the world would you ever do that? Why would you allow that to happen? And that's where David's at. See, think about how quickly emotions and feelings can change. At one moment, David's on top of the world celebrating. And now here David is saying, I don't think you're very good anymore, God. You don't seem very good to me right now. And so what does David do? He scraps his plans. He's like, you know what? Forget about this. I was trying to do the right thing. I was, in my mind, trying to worship God and celebrate God. And now this happens? Well, God, you can forget it. I'm not bringing your presence back to Jerusalem. So what does he do? He parks the ark at Obed-Edom's house. And he kind of wipes his hands and says, I'm done. And notice what he does. He kind of pushes God to the side. Now, let me tell you something. I think, I don't know about you, I can relate to this. If I'm honest with you, there have been things that have happened in my life that caused me to feel that very same way. God, I don't know if you're very good right now. I think you're being a little bit unreasonable. And what can happen is in those moments we can begin to push God to the side. We can begin to question things. We can begin to doubt things. And if we really go to the extreme, then you know what happens? We just push God out of our lives altogether. And I want you to see that that's kind of what's happening today, right? People are walking away from the church. They're walking away from their faith. Things have happened to them in their life that they can't explain. Hard things, hurtful things. And it's in those moments where they are like, I don't know who to blame, so I guess I'm just going to blame God. And I'm going to be angry at him. And so they deconstruct their faith, and they just walk away. God, I'm done. I can't figure this out. You just don't seem very good right now. And I want you to see that's where David was.